You know, I think it was right at the beginning of the second year at the University of Texas. I had taken a lot of the basic classes, and I took one of the electives. I think it was in Plan A that we were in. I had placed out of 21 hours of education, and so I had a little bit of extra slot on my calendar. And I thought I would take an architectural history class, and I took it, and it was quite fascinating. I'd always loved to draw, loved to sketch, things like that, and so it just seemed to be a natural extension. I got a scholarship with my grade school to a military high school. It was in San Antonio, so the military is very big in San Antonio. And I won a scholarship to the University of Texas, took all of the preliminary classes and placed out of quite a few. I'd always been enamored with the University of Texas. I don't know if you've seen it or what it looks like, but it's in the Hill Country, and it's quite beautiful. I learned later that it was a Paul Cray master plan design, and the School of Architecture is right adjacent to the Texas Tower, right in the central part of the campus, and it was always quite lovely. My parents and I would drive up to make different trips, and Austin was one of them. I just fell in love with Austin, and so it was always, that's where I wanted to go to school. And I always knew that I kind of wanted to teach, maybe not as a full profession, but as part of the profession that I wanted to be in. And so I then went to University of Texas at Arlington, and so I finished a master's there, earned a master's in 1978, and I was working from 75 to 78. And that master's then helped, I taught here at the University of Utah for right at 22 years. I was working at a local firm, Komatsu and Associates in Fort Worth, throughout the duration of pursuing a master's and then finally earning one. And so I worked there for 5 years. Then I went to the DFW airport. I wanted to have construction administration experience. And so I worked there for 5 years, and I worked on campus and off campus, and was on some pretty major work. Off campus was the American Airlines corporate headquarters, the reservation office building, training facilities for the stewardesses. It was quite fascinating. And then on campus as well at DFW Airport. I went into Dallas. I was at Foster Meyer Architects there, and I worked there for about 5 years. I was quick on the boards. Way back when we used to draw with our hands, I was quick on the boards, and I wanted to do construction administration as well, and that's where I went to HKS. And I was it was daunting to go to HKS because at the time it was all of about 160 people, and I didn't want to get lost in the crowd, but I wanted to go as a registered architect, so I was at that time. And to be honest, I've been at HKS ever since. It's been right at just about 40 years. I wanted to work on large structures, and HKS was and at the time it was the largest architectural firm in Texas. I wanted to work at that firm. I have to say that during my career at HKS, there's always been people. It's an interesting firm in that it's very collaborative. And any one of my project managers or my principals at the time when I started, I could always walk into their office, always ask them questions, always get help as I needed. There were a handful that were mentors that have now retired. I still talk with them, I still converse with them, and still look up to them as good friends and good men. Different mentors taught me different things. Joe Buskell was a second principal or second president of the firm, and I worked with him as project manager. And actually, he was a project manager before he became president, and I was his project architect, and it was a 30-story corporate office building for Greyhound Dial in Phoenix. And what I learned from Joe was that you don't do the work unless you have a contract. And I recall being in a contract negotiation with him, and I was surprised at how he was speaking to the owner about, yes, we'll do this work, but this is our contract, this is what we need to have. And the owner kept pushing him off, and he was basically saying, we can't work, we're good businessmen. We're not going to do the work until we have a contract. That's just good business. You're a good businessman, so are we. So I learned how to be a good businessman, and I've never forgotten that. I was a generalist. When I joined HKS at 162, now we've grown to 1,700 worldwide. When I joined, it was a single office in Dallas, and we've migrated around the world with 30 offices now. So when I started at HKS, it was, we did a lot of office buildings, and we did quite a bit of architect of record work, working with Black Cape architects. We've migrated from that, but at the time, we were primarily a commercial office. I remember as a project manager, there was discussion that we thought we might expand into healthcare. Fortunately, we did, and now we're the largest healthcare provider in the United States. I remember saying, perhaps we do some sports, and now you see where that's led. And I dabbled in really all of that. I did a lot of corporate headquarters, a lot of high-rise construction, and that kind of work primarily. I was then asked, and the story that I tell is that the president of the firm knew that my wife was from Utah. And so he said, I would like you to open the office in Utah. So when I talked to my wife, that was a very quick conversation, absolutely, because she wanted to return to Utah. So we did, and that was 25 years ago. I used my portfolio because I worked on hotels, I worked on office buildings, that kind of construction. But what I was asked to do primarily here was to be the senior construction administrator for McCady Hospital and for Utah Valley Regional Medical Center, with the instruction, keep Intermountain happy. And so so I jumped into being senior construction administrator. We participated in completing the construction documents for both projects. To be honest, I was here 6 months, and I knew I did not want to return to Texas. I'm a Texan. I love Texas. I love Utah even more. It's a wonderful place, and I just wanted to stay. And so I began parlaying anything that, using my experience, office, corporate headquarters, all of those kinds of things, DFCM, and so I just pursued other work. The office grew from just a handful to just under 50. And we did work up and down the Wasatch Front. And so, I had good seed money with 2 projects to begin the office, but it was really up to me to expand the office, and that's what we did. I taught, like I said, at the University of Utah, and I would pick off 1 or 2 construction documents. It's what I know best as a project manager. Loved it. I absolutely loved teaching it at the U. I would pick off 1 or 2 of the best kids every semester for 8 years, 10 years. Emir Tursik is now the office director for our office. I passed the baton to him. He's been with me 20 years. I have worked in 28 states and a handful of foreign countries. I've lived in Texas, I've lived in California, and I've lived here. I would say that there is a can-do spirit here that is really genuinely different. It's I think Utahns for the most part are fairly conservative. They don't get out over their skis. They just have this entrepreneurial spirit that, and I've heard it said, the Utah way. We don't know, but we'll figure it out and we'll get it done. I tell people back home in Dallas, I have the best job at HKS. And they look at me and goes, why would you say that? And I said, well, first, I get to work on big projects with HKS. Second, I like everybody that I work with. And I like everybody that I work with because I've hired them. I don't hire people I don't like. And third, look around you. This is the most beautiful place to be. Where would be better? Where would be easier? Where would be nicer? I remember my first project with HKS. It was a 1,200 room, 750 key hotel on access with Disney World in Florida. And it was 18 stories. It was a full complement of convention hotel, all of the hotel rooms and restaurants, things like that. We created a lake, cabanas around the lake and such. But I remember sitting with the owner. It had an 18-story atrium. And we were sitting in the atrium, and we had this game. And the game was we would watch people come into the atrium and watch them do that, you know. And the game was, okay, the husband's going to do it or the wife's going to do it first, okay? And that's what we did. And it was so much fun. It was so engaging to see it. But to be with the owner in a completed space, and they were just having fun. That's the best one. And every one of the projects when you finish is the best one. You know, finishing Eccles, for instance, and being there with Cesar Pelle, who was our partner. First off, that was over the top. You talk about mentor and education. I learned so much from both Cesar and from Mitch Hirsch. But being in the completed space and going from that very first discussion with Cesar about what is Utah, and me explaining what is Utah to him, and assisting with the design, and competing for the project, and winning the project, and then completing the project, and then on opening night with the Tabernacle Choir and all of the church leaders and all of the leaders from Salt Lake being in the room and being with Cesar, and seeing the space that we had imagined, that was the best project. Till the next project, and then every one of those things are the things that keeps you going. I like to think that I'm a mentor, that the thing that I'm proud of, really proud of, and I said it to the president of our firm, you know, at our 25th anniversary last night, that I feel like a proud papa. And I have brought these kids in from the university. They were young college kids. I saw them date, I saw them marry, I saw them have kids. You know, now their kids have gone off on missions, now their kids are married and such. And I think I'm proud of the fact that I was able to do that for them, to impact their lives, because it feels like a family. Quick story, at HKS, after the pandemic, certain cities, it was hard to get their people back to work, back into the office. We were always working. But my furthest employee is 28 miles. Here in Utah, what does that mean? It's about 28 minutes, 30 minutes. In New York, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, San Francisco, that's an hour to an hour and a half. So we have the highest average daily occupancy in the United States of all of our HCAS people, all of our HCAS offices. But it tells me that people like to be where they are. It's a team sport, architecture is, and the team likes to be together. We've proven that we could do the work during the pandemic remotely, but at least here in Salt Lake, we prefer to be together. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we have created a culture within Salt Lake City where we're family, we're friends, we do a lot of things together at all levels. My only regret is that I didn't find the arts until 14 years ago. Had I to do all over again, I would have gotten into the arts from the very beginning. There's as much fun as it is, like I was saying, of doing the hotels and doing the hospitals and doing the high-rise office buildings, and I've done 100 of them. There's something about the arts that is just completely different. It brings people into the spaces that we create in a completely different way. They're spaces that captivate people, that they're special places. There is a significant difference in doing user group meetings, people that are going to use the spaces. There is a difference between doctors and nurses and technicians and conductors and ballerinas. there is a difference.
And what is it?
There's every one of the types, the practices that I work in. There's a passion to have the best hotel. There's a passion to have the best hospital. The arts are just special, and the people are just different. The show must go on, and give an artist a space, and he or she will do it. Will work in it. Give them a better space, they'll be better at it. That's how they're different. I would say that it's more of a passion than a career. For the first, I don't know, 8 to 10 years, there would be changes, but they would be fairly minor changes. I'll give you an example. We went at HKS, we went from paper to Mylar. It was you understand. There was a change in technology. We had to learn how to use lead pencils as opposed to or plastic pencils as opposed to the lead. We had, we used ink, but it was different on Mylar. So that was a little change. I'm old enough to remember when we used pin bar. Okay, I remember we used Mylar. I would do all of my details at 8.5 by 11 on Mylar sheets, and we would tape them to a sheet. We would send it to the printer, and a Mylar was made at 50% or 100%, whatever it was, and that would be our sheet. That was a little bit of a change. I remember this notion of we're going to use, and HKS had 2 principals that toured the country trying to select what the right electronic system would be. And we wound up with an EasyCAD system, and it was very dynamic. And I raised my hand saying, I want to do this. I want to try this. I think this sounds interesting. Maybe this will catch on. I'll give it a try. And I remember at the time it was that we would do floor plans and reflected ceiling plans with CAD, but all of the other drawings we would still draw by hand. And then we said, hang on, maybe we could actually do all of the others. And I remember that Greyhound Dial project, it was about 30-story corporate headquarters in Phoenix. We drew, that was the first HKS project that we drew everything, top to bottom, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all of the architectural, landscaping we drew in CAD. That was a big change. And we stayed with that. And there was increases in technology, and we could do things better and faster and everything else. Then Revit came in, and everything prior to that was basically replicating what we could do by hand. A line was a line. When you went to Revit, that wall had intelligence. That wall was, we would tell it that it was a 3 5/8 inch stud with 2 layers of 5/8 drywall, and it has an electrical outlet with windows that are shaped such and such. So it then extended that to form a wall, a ceiling, a wall, a floor, and now I had a model, completely different. So that was a big change. And to the Revit changes, we're making those same kind of large changes over and over and over. And I will say that it was like 10 years, and then 5 years, and then 3 years, and then a year and a year. And I mean, it just, it's changed the dynamic. That it used to be that when we brought in kids from the university, there was a long training period. Now, quite frankly, kids are coming to us and are training us at, this is the new thing. This is how it's done. This is how it could be faster. That's the exciting thing about architecture. The LA office has something a little bit different in that it'll have the typical office, but then we're having this dynamic office right adjacent to it, where it's going to be, and I'm not describing it, to everything that it should, but we're going to make things. We're going to model things, not just architectural models, but wall systems, concrete systems, roofing systems, and going the next step that our model will be used for construction as opposed to construction documents. Those are changes that are now coming quicker, and the leaps between those are just even larger. The way architects and contractors deal with one another has changed quite a bit. I have seen it where it was how do I put it? Where architects would give drawings and the contractor would go build it. I think there was some years of a bit of contention about what does this mean? I think architects and contractors have figured out that it's better to hold hands than argue. And I have seen, at least we have anyway, and there's good contractors here in Utah, that it's really a collaboration of, and it's a respect level of what we do architecturally and what they do, which to me honestly is the harder part of taking the architecture and building it. But there's a different working relationship between architects and contractors throughout my history, throughout my career. And honestly, it's much, much better now. I'll go back to something that my dad taught me. He said, take money out of the equation. What do you like to do? And I always liked to draw, always liked to build things. So that seemed like it was a natural. So if I were giving advice to young architects, I would ask them the same kind of thing, that architecture is not just, it's not all encompassing. Architecture is now, I think, evolved into specializations. There are people, there are hospitals, and that's a very, very special thing. Airports, very, very special thing. High-rise construction is different than the 5/1 apartments that we do. And I would ask them, what would you like to do, and honestly, specialize earlier rather than later, and find that thing that you really like to do. I think the age of generalist architecture, it'll always be there for the smaller firms, but I'm speaking for just my experience. With the larger firms, we are a body of specialized individuals that work together. So my advice to young kids, if indeed you want to work on a specific kind of thing, whether it's hotels or hospitals or airports or whatever it is, do it and be the best at that practice that you can be. I'm proud to be an architect. I'm proud to be in a position of changing cities, changing areas, neighborhoods, and things. I'm working on a project in South Dallas right now. Historically it's a black area, and it has not had the services that it could have, should have over the years. And the project that we're doing there, a theater project, is really helping to knit that neighborhood back together again. I'm proud to be an architect that does that, and it's I think it's different than being a doctor and a lawyer or a teacher, which are all great professions, but being able to, over the course of time, physically see something that you did, that's very gratifying to me.